guys, and welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of this beautiful gown that we're making at the moment. This is just the mock-up. We're gonna start sewing this piece today. So if you haven't checked out part 1 of this project, you definitely should do, because I'm talking you through the whole fitting process, the draping process, and so on and so forth, because it's definitely worth a watch. And after you're done with that, you can come back here to watch part 2, where we're actually gonna sew this dress. So this is the color that we're gonna make it in, and last week I was talking about how I'm gonna end up having a bunch of fabric now, because I bought one by mistake, or like I bought the wrong kind, and then I bought another one which would have come too late, and then I bought one on Friday, this one, which we're gonna use just so that I can start earlier than planned. But now all of the other fabrics came in, and I guess we're gonna have a lot of dark blue, teal, green, pine colored projects coming up. So I'm super in love with this pine color. Looks amazing. I can't wait to make a really cute dress or something, maybe an elegant gown or something. So definitely stay tuned for that and hit the subscribe button so you'll get notified every time that I post, and I might be making something out of these fabrics. So, and yeah, I would say let's start. So we're gonna start with our front piece, which is this long, very weird looking piece right here. These cutouts in the sides. And we're just gonna close the darts. We're gonna close the darts as the first thing in every piece that has the darts. So we're gonna do that in the front, then also in the back, and in the skirt pieces. And we're just gonna do that by putting right sides together just where the dart is. And it's smart to mark the dart on the wrong side of the fabric, not like me. I marked it on the right side, which is obviously not useful because you're gonna have the wrong side facing yourself and not the right side while sewing. So just like this, and then we're gonna put right sides together, and as you can see now, you're able to see where you're supposed to sew. So this is so much easier, as you can just put the lines on top of each other and close the darts that way. Now that that's done, we're gonna iron the darts away from the center, and the bust darts we're gonna iron up, so that once you look onto the piece, you're not looking inside of the bust dart. So if you were to iron it down, you would always just look inside of the stitching right here, and that's just not nice. So we're just gonna iron it up, and it's kind of invisible. So that's a small hack that I got taught in university, and I think it's one of the coolest ones. Because it's just such a smart thing. But anyways, all of the other darts get ironed towards the side seam. And one thing that I'm gonna do with my piece that you don't necessarily have to do, I'm just gonna put some hem tape just beneath the dart, just so that it stays upwards. I just don't want it to flop around, so this basically glues it to the upper side. And it's not visible on the other side as well. So once we're done with all of the darts, we're gonna take our front piece and our two back pieces, the ones with the interfacing tape on them are the outer fabric pieces, and we're gonna put right sides together at the shoulder seam and close the shoulder seam. The shoulder seams get ironed as per usual towards the back. And for this, to fix this in place, I'm also going to use some hem tape. And this is, as I said before, obviously optional. I'm just doing it just to be sure. And because I am using a fabric that is not easy to iron, I'm already at my almost highest setting at my iron, and it still has problems. And this is what it looks like from the outside. Before we continue with the side seams and the sleeves and so on and so forth, we have to do the shoulder pad part. And I'm still thinking about how I'm going to do it because there are two ways of doing it. I think I might want to do the way that is safer, but also harder because your machine just has to handle a bit more. So I'm gonna think about it. Okay, plan. What we're gonna do first is sew in the sleeves, which is what you should usually do. Just had a small, I don't know, blackout. I forgot how to do stuff. So we're gonna sew in the sleeves first. And that's easiest if your side seam is still open, even though our side seam is just gonna be teeny tiny, but still. So these are my sleeves. You wanna put the left and right sleeves correctly into the armholes, and you can do that either by matching up the notches or seeing that the dart is this way, so this is the back, or the seams in general. And we're just gonna sew this in by putting right sides together as per usual. Now, very important step before you put your shoulder pads in is to iron all of the seam allowances towards the sleeve. This needs to be facing, everything needs to be facing the sleeve because it makes this cute little bump right here. And once the shoulder pad is in, it's just gonna look very professional, very nice. So you wanna iron everything towards the sleeve, and if you have troubles with that, you might want to cut into the seam allowance and, you know, give it a little bit of ease, because this is a curve and it will kind of like bulk up like this. It already does. So this might need a little bit of help right here. So to prepare for the shoulder pads, what I did was just fold the pad in half and mark the middle right here, because that's where the shoulder seam is gonna be. And then I just pinned the seam where the mark is with all of the seam allowances facing this way, made sure of that. And now I'm just working my way downwards while folding the seam allowance towards the sleeve and then pinning the shoulder pad in place. I'm gonna do the same thing for the front side right here. And this can be a bit tedious, but you have to work very well for this. Or like you have to, you know, take your time and like do it correctly, because this will be very visible if it's not done neatly. And my shoulder pads are about 1 centimeter in the sleeve right here. So this is what it should look like. If there are any bumps, you want to redo this so that this seam right here doesn't go like this. As you can see, it makes like this weird curve here. So you want to have this go down in a straight way. So just like that. Straight down. Same goes for here. You can see that there is a curve. So you're gonna repin this so that the curve is gonna be gone. And now what I like to do is to just steam the seam. Not ironing it anymore because you don't want the bump to be like flat, this bump here at the sleeve. So I'm just giving it a steam so that it stays in place like this. And here, this, you can just steam iron it as well. Just make sure to not burn yourself. Now to put the shoulder pads in place, to actually sew them in, I would recommend to hand stitch them. So you want to fix those to the seam allowance right here at 3 different points, which is right here at the sleeve notch, at the shoulder point, and at the other sleeve notch. And then you also want to fix it up here at the shoulder seam so that it's not just going to flap around. If you feel comfortable enough, you can try and machine stitch this seam, but this is not something I would recommend for people who have never done it before, who might be new to shoulder pads in general. Then I would say hand stitch. I will try to machine stitch it just because I've done it before and I know how to do it, and we're gonna see how that goes. Look at the shoulders. They look gorgeous. I am super happy with how they turned out. I just pinned everything close, by the way, I didn't continue. But yeah, I'm happy with how they turned out. Machine stitching worked out perfectly fine for me, so you can do that as well if you want to. And now we can go ahead and close the side seam here of the sleeve, put the back piece together, close the side seams and dividing seams. And the outer layer is done. And we're gonna close the side seam obviously by putting right sides together of the sleeve and the teeny tiny side seam that we have. And I am always starting from the hem, or like not at the sleeve but the other side, because when you stitch the side seam close and you go into the sleeve, you're gonna sew your seam allowance towards the sleeve automatically, and that's really important. So just start at the other end of the hem of the sleeve, so in this case at the cutout right here, and sew upwards towards the hem of the sleeve and sew the seam allowance into the sleeves. So now that the most difficult part, frankly, is done, we can continue with more easy things, which is the back skirt part. So we're just gonna take our back pieces, the side back and the center back pieces, and we're just gonna close the back dividing seam by putting right sides together and closing the seam right here. And now we can put these pieces onto the side seams of the dress, just like this, and close the side seam. To be done with the outer layer or outer fabric, we still have to do a few things, one of which is the zipper in the back, which we can do right now already. And there should be notches in the pattern right here where we're gonna sew the zipper in. And this is the easiest method I found, was to open up your zipper, and then the band right here has some seam allowance already on it. So this goes right here where the triangles go downwards. I like to match that up with my corners and then just pin the zipper in place, and then just go down without stretching any of the fabrics. If anything, you should stretch the zipper and not the fabric itself, because it is a stretchy fabric, and if you stretch out the fabric, the zipper gets wavy, and you don't want that. It doesn't look really good. So if anything, you want to give the zipper band a teeny tiny bit more fabric to attach to. But the best method obviously is to have both not stretched at all. I'm just gonna sew this with my zipper foot up until the notch. To match up both sides, the easiest method I found was to close it. You can already see that it's sewn in pretty nicely. And then you want to put needles into specific points. So right here, for example, this is where I matched up with the notch, and you should remember how you put this in right here. And now you can, while the zipper is still closed, just match up these sides right here. So the needle goes where the notch is right here, and that's also the point to which you're gonna sew, and you're gonna replicate this right here. And now you can open the zipper and sew the other side in. And now once you close this, you should find that the corners up here match up really nicely, and also until where you stitch, which is now important because you want to close the remaining center back seam, and then we can cut the zipper also to fit the length. Obviously you want to buy a zipper that fits your dress. I just didn't know at the time of buying the zipper how long my zipper will be, but that's not a problem. You want to have it longer than shorter, because you can always shorten your zipper, but you can never make your zipper longer than it is. So you want to match up your seams right there, and then if you can, most of the times you're not gonna sew right to where you started or stopped stitching, but at least you want to match up the stitching line on both sides, and then you can just go ahead and close the remaining center back seam. So we can go ahead and cut this down to about 2 centimeters longer, or 3 or whatever, than where you stopped stitching. And we're gonna put a bar tag right here. So don't open the zipper up as of right now, because you will fall down and it won't, you will destroy your zipper basically. But before we're gonna do that, we're gonna quickly iron the center back seam so that it looks very nice. Now you have a really nice transition from your zipper to your center back seam. So let's put the bar tag in, just to be sure, and then we can also attach the zipper band to the side seams so that you're having an easier time putting the zipper up. So we're gonna iron the dress hem 4 centimeters up. You should find notches everywhere, so you just want to fold it right up where the notches are. If you need any help, you can always use something like this and put it up 4 centimeters plus seam allowance and iron it that way. And what I like to do is just put some needles in, try not to put them through the outer fabric, just to prevent any sort of thread pulling, or, you know, once you iron, that you might get the bumps of where you put the needle. So I'm going to put this right here just into the seam allowance so that it won't be visible on the outer side, but it still holds. And now what I wanted to do is actually prepare the closure in the center back and the upper center back right here, because we're gonna put some loops and then some buttons that we're gonna make out of the same fabric. So we're gonna have some buttons covered with this fabric, which I'm excited about. So we need loops for that, and those are gonna be made out of one of the 3 time salvage to salvage strips that we cut out. These right here. And we either want to prepare them here on the ironing table and fold them 5 centimeters inwards on both sides, and then fold them in on themselves just like this and top stitch them. But this fabric is very, very hard to control with the iron. I have it on a very hot setting and it barely stays. So for me, it's probably easiest to just fold it while I'm sewing. If you have an easier fabric, go ahead and iron it. It's probably the best option as you have something to orientate yourself on while sewing, just like this. But I'm gonna do that at the sewing table. Also, of course, you want to put your strips together, because if we're doing one, we're doing all of them at the same time. As for the waistband, we also need the same thing. So we're gonna put right sides to right side and just, you know, stitch them together, cut down the selvage and iron it open, and do that for all of them so that you have a very long strip, and then we're gonna fold it accordingly and sew it on the sewing machine. So the last time that I made these, I made a video about that too. You can click up here in the eye to watch that. I made like a really cute corset top, which had a bunch of these button loops. And I used 8 centimeter pieces for that, but the buttons were bigger than the ones that I will be using here. So I'm thinking to just size it down 1 centimeter and to just use 7 centimeter loops, just like this. I'm not sure yet how much I'll need. I'll have to do the math on that. So basically what you need to do for that is, first of all, draw in seam allowance on either side, and then measure this in between, which is 21 centimeters, is about 2 centimeters thick. So we'll go up 5 millimeters as we have an even number. And we'll just draw in our loop placements, which are 2 centimeters wide, which should equal to 10 loops exactly. So we're gonna cut off 10 times 7 centimeter strips from this, and the rest can be used as waistband. So I made my strip here pretty long. I'm not quite sure if I'll need that long of a waistband, but I just wanted to be sure, so I'll just shorten it to however much I want the waistband to be in the end. And those are my loops. And now I'm just gonna go ahead and put these on, oh hello, now I'm just going to put these on, I think, the right side of my back, just where I also put the markings in here. And just to make it easier for myself, I'm gonna clip into the seam allowance right where I marked, just to orientate myself a bit better. I want to have the stitching on the inner side, so I'm gonna put it like this and do it for all of the loops all the way up. And this is what it's gonna look like. So we're gonna have these cute little button loops right here, and that is already all of the outer fabric. So we can go ahead and put the dress together with the lining fabric. It's pretty much the same, apart from obviously all of the shoulder stuff, and then also it has a seam in the waist just to have a facing fabric and then a lining fabric in the skirt part, so you just need to put these together as well. The order is the same as usual. So the order is the same. We already did the darts in the facings, and then we have to do the same thing for our linings, as you can see here. And yeah, the rest is exactly the same as with the outer fabric apart from the shoulder stuff. And then we can continue and put everything together. So I'm gonna see you then. I think I'm gonna understitch this seam right here just to be sure. That's what it looks like. So the sleeves actually get the facing attached right here. It should fit pretty nicely together. The dart is already closed in the pattern, and you can just put right sides together and close the hemline right here. And then we're gonna attach the sleeves to the main lining body to work on it further. I'm ironing the seam allowance towards the lining, by the way. And I do that because once this is attached, the lining will overlap this by 2 centimeters, so it's gonna lay somewhere here, and it would make no sense to have the seam allowance facing the facing, also because this is just thicker fabric, so you just iron it towards the lining. And now we can put the sleeves into the piece. So before you close the side seams of the sleeve, you want to make sure that you leave one side seam of the sleeve kind of open, so you want to leave a hole open. I would suggest to close the side seam up until the underarm hole points, like here, and then just go a tiny bit further into the lining and leave a hole open that is all the length of the sleeve, and then just start like a few centimeters before the facing seam begins. That way you are going to be able to turn around your dress inside out or outside in, because otherwise you're going to have to hand stitch something close in the end. This way you're going to machine stitch everything, and yeah, it's the easiest and best method I can recommend. So I'm going to do that with this sleeve right here. The other one is already fully closed, so let's go. Okay, lining is done, dress is done. I just put it on the bust right now just to see how it looks. It looks amazing. It's like business in the front, party in the back, so amazing. And we're now gonna put both of the pieces together. We're gonna start with the neckline, I think that's the easiest. So we're just gonna put our outer fabric right sides up and our lining right sides down and match up all of the notches and close the neckline right there. We can do all of this in one go because the back and the neckline are more or less connected because it has this buttoned up center back. So all of this is one seam. So we're just gonna prepare this and sew everything in one go, or as far as we can. I think the zipper is as far as we can go. So we're gonna sew up until the notch of the zipper. We're gonna match up the notches from the outer fabric from the zipper, where the zipper ends, with the one on the lining, the skirt lining. And I'm gonna start sewing right here and work my way around the back opening, the backless part of the dress, whatever. To turn this curve out nicely, you want to just cut into the seam allowance to give the seam allowance a bit more ease. And make sure not to cut into your piece, obviously. That would be really bad at this point. And you also want to cut down the corners everywhere. And at the neck you also want to cut towards the seam to give the allowance a bit more ease. So this makes the curved seams lay nicer once you turn them right sides out. Otherwise they're gonna start bulging outwards and the facing or the lining will be visible, and we don't want that. And now we can start turning everything over. So it already looks promising. We're just doing this to check whether everything looks fine, because we're gonna understitch the seam right now as well. So that we're gonna be sure we're never gonna see the facing or lining from the outside at all. So that's what we're gonna do next. And that's especially important at the round cutout right here. So we're gonna do that from this point, just on the closure here, all the way towards the zipper, and also on the other side obviously, and then also right here at the neck cutout. So we're gonna take everything back out and understitch this seam. And this can be a bit tricky because we want to have this seam right here face this way, and we want to stitch it, top stitch it here. So this can be a bit of a tricky situation, especially since we don't have that much room, but we're gonna try. So now I understitched this. This is what it looks like. And I forgot to put the waistband in there. So the waistband goes right where this dart is here. And obviously I want to put that in because it gives the dress a really nice waist. So I'm just gonna open those two seams back up just a tiny bit, just like this, and cut this in half and put one in. And what I'm gonna do is just top stitch this on here. So, next up, before we finish the hem and everything, because literally we only have to close the hem of the sleeves, this hem, and the center back, and then the dress is done. But there are a few things on the inside that we still have to do because we have a lining. I was already saying that we're doing the blazer or jacket manufacturing techniques. That means that we have to fix the lining in place on the underarm and then also on the shoulders right here, and still the shoulder pad here. I should have done that probably earlier because the access is now a bit more difficult, but that doesn't matter. We're still open right here. So we can go either from down here because that's still open, or from the sleeve opening that we left. We can go in here and grab both the sleeve right here on the underarm and the lining on the underarm. So this is this seam and this seam. And we're just gonna take it out like this. And then we're gonna need scrap material. So you can use any scrap material that you have, maybe your outer fabric, something, doesn't matter. I'm just gonna use some leftover from my tryout pieces. You just wanna cut out 4 strips. They don't need to look pretty, they don't need to have any specific measurement, they just need to be functional. So I would say 2 centimeters times 5 or something like that should be more than enough. And this is all you need for that. You're gonna sew together the underarm seam with the lining seam with this tape right here. Just like this, so that when you go out of the dress, you're not pulling your whole lining of your sleeve out as well. You're gonna do that for the underarm and then also for the shoulder seam. So right here, right here. These two need to get fixed in place at the shoulder seam. And you're gonna do exactly the same on the other side as well. So now you can see that when you try to do this, these are held in place. We can go ahead and put the lining into the sleeve, the actual sleeve. And probably the smartest to do this still through the hem. We're gonna use this hole just to close the hem in the end, because I figure it's the easiest to have the bigger hole right here. So we're gonna go in between the lining and the outer fabric, and between the lining and the outer fabric here in the sleeve, grab these 2 seams right here. For that you need to make sure that the sleeve in here is not twisted in any way. So this should be fine, like this. So you want to grab this right here and this right here, right sides together, and take it out through the hem. So you should end up with like this sort of tube from outside to lining. And I'm not removing my fingers yet because I want this to match up and not to twist in any way, because if it twists you can't go in the sleeve anymore. And put a pin in right away. And then you can continue and match up your outer sleeve and your lining. You can close the sleeve seam. So one of the most important things still is to close the center back, which is still open, before we can actually finish the hem and the dress. So that's just matching up everything and closing the center back towards the notch. You want to, let's say, yeah, stop at the notch so that there is a small tiny hole right here, and we're just gonna iron it down, and that's gonna make a really neat inside. And to close the hem, you can now go to the inside from the hole in one sleeve. Probably want to go from the armhole and go in between the sleeves and in between the lining and the outer fabric, and then grab the matching seams. So this one right here is the center back. So you want to match these two up and take this out through the sleeve. So I'm just going to take out all of the pins that I still had in here and just take it out all the way. You want the whole hem to get out there. This is going to make, just as the sleeves, like a kind of tube. And now you can just go around the hem and match up all of the seams and close the hemline. So the hem is closed now, and now we can take it out of the sleeve to see how everything looks like. Not quite sure how. Like this. And because we pre-ironed this, it's just a very easy press. And now what I like to do is to usually go back in through the sleeves and take out these two, like the seams everywhere, and fix them in place on the inside. But this is a very stressful dress. So taking it out of the sleeve again and fixing it in place is a bit too much for me at the moment. So I'm just gonna put some very small bar tags, vertical ones, into the seam. So I'm gonna try to sew right into the ditch of the seam all around, so that I fix my facing in place and it won't, you know, do this, which will happen if you don't fix it in place. You can do that by hand on the inside, you can use hem tape for that, or you can do the method that I am doing with this dress here. I probably will have to hand stitch in the center front or somewhere here because there is no seam. So I'm gonna try to just like hand stitch here and just grab onto a few threads so that it won't be visible. But all of the other seams I'm just gonna do with the bar tag. So the hem is closed. It's also bar tagged in the seams. You can't really tell that they're there. And here in the front I chose 3 points to just fix the facing in place. And now that should be done as well. Now we're almost done. We're gonna take out our sleeve lining again with the hole, the one with the hole, because we can now close this. We don't longer need it anymore. You want to do that very closely to the open edge right here. Button time. So the dress is done. Now we just need the buttons to to close it in the back right here. And for that I wanted to make my own buttons. So we're just quickly going to put this aside, and now I have 2 sizes of buttons. Smaller ones and big ones. These are 15 and 11 millimeters. I think the 11 ones will look better, but I don't know. I already tested these and made a reel about it. This is the size of the bigger ones, the 15 millimeter ones. And I don't have a pre-made one of the smaller ones right here, but we can use the big one to determine whether that's the size that we want, or if we're going to use the 11 millimeter ones. Because the loops are big enough for this one right here. Probably better to use the bigger ones rather than the smaller ones. Just gonna make a small one, I think, as well, and then go from there. So this here is the size of the small ones, and this here is the size of the bigger ones. I think those will hold up better and those will look more intricate. And these are easier to make and these are fiddly. I think I have to make these ones. So guys, that's it for today's video. As you can see, the dress is done and I can't wait to put it on and to model it, and I'm of course gonna show you how it looks like in just a second. Before that though, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing, hit the button down below, and also ring the bell so you'll get notified every time that I post. I always post on Sundays. And in the meantime, you can go and check out my Instagram, because I am, you know, updating you on a lot of things over there on my stories, and I'm also giving you these small kind of videos that you can just watch on the go, with a lot of sewing tricks and sewing tips and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, you can definitely go ahead and check that out as well. And of course I'm also going to post a lot of things about my cat right here. She's always with me when I'm sewing, and that's really, really nice. And yeah, other than that, thank you so much for watching. Oh yeah, of course the pattern is available now on my Etsy shop. That's the most direct way to support me actually. So if you haven't already, go and check out my shop. There are all of the patterns that I am making here on my YouTube channel available. And yeah, I hope you find something that you're interested in. So thank you so much for watching, and I'm gonna see you next Sunday. Bye guys!